Hello, in the following video, we will see an overview of the new collection of Shopify themes, Horizon. This collection of themes was presented during Shopify Summer Editions of 2025. They are made by Shopify and entirely free to install in your store. From the Shopify Editions page, if we click on this Visit Theme Store link, we are going to be directed to this landing page that says Horizon, which is the name of this collection, and then we are shown these 10 themes based on it. These themes are all using the latest features from Shopify, such as theme blocks, conditional settings, section categories, cart drawer discounts, and more. And even though here you see 10 themes, the code base for these themes is all the same. The only thing that changes between them is the initial state of the settings. So if you are a bit familiar with the code architecture themes have, the only difference between all of these themes lies in the JSON files. The sections, blocks, JavaScript files, and so on is the same across all of them. Later in the video, I'll show you how I check this and how you can do so yourself if you want. Because even though they are all the same theme, Shopify isn't explicitly mentioning that anywhere over here. So now let's go to this new development store that I just created. You can see that at least as of now, on May 2025, the default theme is still Dawn. However, if you scroll down, you can see here that in popular free themes, we have all of this Horizon collection. So I will add the Horizon one. Let's wait for it to be added, and let's start checking the theme once that's done. So now that the theme has been added, let's publish this to make this the live theme. And then let's click here on Customize to start seeing the different options this theme has. And I will also have Dawn opened in a second tab so we can see the difference between them. And starting with the homepage we have by default, we can see that the structure is very similar. We have a hero and a product list in a grid in both teams. So the hero in this team looks like this, and in this team looks like this. And then we also have the product grid below. However, that's as far as the similarities go, because then the hero section itself is much more customizable over here in Horizon than it is in Dawn. Let's see an example. So in Horizon, if I click over here on Add Blog, you can see all of the different blogs that we can add. And there are even more after I click on that Show All. You can see that I can add any of these blogs over here to achieve the layout that I want in my hero. In Dawn, on the other hand, we are much more limited. We can only add a text blog over here, a heading blog, and a buttons blog. I only see here text because heading and buttons are limited to only one of each. If I remove buttons over here, you can see that it will now show in this list. However, this list is very short compared to all of the different possibilities we have over here in Horizon. So to see this in action, let's say that I wanted to add a marquee block right below this logo and text line. Let's start by adding the block itself from here. Marquee, by the way, is a scrolling text, so something like this. However, you can see that as soon as I add it, it goes side by side. It doesn't go below it, and that is because over here the layout is set to horizontal. It should be set to vertical. However, now this logo and these text blocks are also one on top of the other, and I don't want that. I want these two to be on the same line. To do this, we are going to be using the group block. This is a very powerful block that will let us create pretty much any layout we want. After I add my group, you can see that I can add blocks inside of it because this is also one of the advantages of using theme blocks. We can nest up to 8 levels of depth. So I can take this logo block and nest it inside of group over here, and I can take this text block and also nest it inside of group. So let's try to drag it over here, and there it is. Now I can click on group and I can say that the layout for this one should be horizontal. And we get something similar to what we had in the beginning. However, we also need to change the alignment. Let's say that we want this to be a space between, and now it looks like what we had at the beginning. And to give this a more meaningful name, I can click over here and rename this group. So let's say that this is hero content. And now let's say that I wanted to take this hero content and this marquee and put them closer to each other because right now they are too separated. This is happening because something here has padding, and there it is. Let's reduce the padding top of this one to 0. But also it seems like in hero, The position is set to space between. We don't want that. Let's move this to be position button. And now we see that they are closer to each other. Probably too close. So actually, let's increase the third party here a little to maybe 12 pixels. And there we have it. That looks better. I also would like to decrease the padding bottom here. So let's click on Hero. And on bottom, let's reduce this to 12 pixels as well. And maybe we can increase the text size of this marquee a little. This text block and this text block are the same one, by the way. Even though they are nested in different blocks, they are exactly the same block and share the same settings. You can see that in typography, this one appears to have more settings than this one over here, but that is because those other settings were shown are conditional settings. If I click on custom over here, all of these settings are exposed so I can create exactly the text configuration that I want. But if I click here on default, then they are collapsed and this behaves as a default text. But let's focus on the marquee's text once again. So let's click on this and let's say that the preset that I want to use is of heading 4. So the text is a bit larger and is also in bold. And we can take this and save it. And now let's take a moment to understand the group block, which is this one that I've renamed over here to be hero content, just so we can understand more of what we can do. Starting with this link property over here. This is very powerful because let's say that I wanted to make this logo clickable and be a link somewhere else. Right now, there is no setting for that, but I can easily solve this by wrapping this into a group and then adding a link to it. So let's add a group. Let's take this logo and let's drop it here. And you can see that it looks a bit different right now because it is smaller than what it was before. The reason for that is because over here we have a width of 50%. That worked before when the logo was at the topmost level over here, where it only had this one as its sibling, this text block as its sibling. But right now, it is alone inside this group, so it should be taking 100%. And then the group itself should be the one taking 50%. So we can do this by in size, clicking on custom, and then setting the custom width to be 50%. And now, if I click over here, it looks like what it was looking before. However, now I can take this group and I can make it be a link somewhere else. So just for the sake of this example, let's make it be a link to the gift card page. So let's save. And now if I go to my store and I refresh this page, you can see that the logo, if I click on it, it is a link to the gift card product page. And just like we did earlier, let's rename this group over here to have a more meaningful name, such as logo link wrapper. So whenever someone is seeing the editor over here, they don't have to guess why this block is over here. The name says it right away. Next, we have the layout settings over here. We can make this be horizontal with the option to make it vertical mobile, like you can see over here. Or we can make it vertical right away, and then that option disappears, and we only have the settings to control how this verticality works. So right now it is aligned to the left, but we can center it, or we can move it to the right. And for the position, we can move it to the top, to the bottom, space between, and so on. However, that doesn't work that well here because the height is set to fit. But if I change the height to be 100%, for example, you will now see that when I change the position to be bottom, or center, or top, it does something. But let's go back to fit. What fit is doing is that it will take only the height it needs to take. So in that case, position isn't doing anything. And if we go back to horizontal, we have similar settings. Position does the exact same thing. If I click it here, you can see that the change is very minimal. There is something happening. If I move this to the bottom, for example, you can see that this text moves a little. However, for it to be truly noticeable, we'll have to change the height. And now, if I move this to the center, you can see that all of the content is being moved accordingly. but let's once again go back to fit. Next, we have this gap setting over here. What it will do depends on the direction. For the horizontal direction, it will control the horizontal gap between these items. In this case, however, it will not do anything. As you can see, I changed this and nothing changes because the alignment is set to a space between. What that means is that it will try to put as much space apart between these two items. But if I change this to, for example, be center, now the gap is going to take effect on how this looks like. For example, if I set this to 0, you can see that the items move closer together. But if I increase the gap, you can see that they start to move apart. And in the case of the vertical direction, then the gap controls the vertical space between these two items. So once again, if I move these to be 0, then we can see that the items are very close together. But if I change this to a higher number, then we can see that they start to move apart. And now let's see a few limitations that these layout options have. So let's go back to how we were before by clicking here on horizontal. Let's set the alignment to a space between, and the gap was at 12. Now on desktop, this is looking right, but an issue we have, first of all, is that if I wanted to make this text be aligned to the right now I cannot do that because this setting is not present at the moment. A developer could add this setting for you, but it doesn't come right out of the box. And you can see here that not even if I set the preset to be custom, I have the option to change the text alignment. So let's revert this to default, and let's click here on the group. Maybe the option is at a group level, but we can see that text alignment is also not present over here at the moment. Another limitation is that if I go to the mobile view, you can see that right now this is not totally centered, but also it is not totally aligned to the left because I cannot change the text alignment to be to the left. But if I try to center this by changing the alignment to be center, then it looks all right over here. But then on desktop, we are going to see that this is set to center as well. The reason for that is because even though there is a setting to change the more mobile alignment to be vertical, there is not a setting to independently control the mobile alignment when it is vertical. The alignment is shared across both desktop and mobile in this version of this theme. And this is version 1.0.1. Shopify may fix this in the future, but just letting you know some of the limitations this theme has so you can take a better decision of whether it is the right thing for you or not. Going to size, we have already seen what fit does, which is take the minimum amount of space. In this case, you can see that it took only as much space as it needed for this logo and this text to fit comfortably over here. If I change this to be fill, it will take all of the available space. There is a lot of white space here at the top because this section has 100 pixels of padding top, but if I change this to be 0, you can see that it now takes all of the available space at the top. Well, let's remember this to be 100 once again. And going back here, we also have custom. What custom does is that it lets you select what percentage of the total available space it will take. So if I set this to 45%, then that's how 45% of the available space looks like. This will work exactly the same way for both width and mobile weight. And finally, we have settings for changing the appearance and padding. These are much easier to follow. For example, for the color scheme one, you can turn this off and then you can explicitly select which color scheme you want to use for this group. For example, let's change it to be this one, and you can see that now looks like this. But that's regard to what was on before because this one looks better in this case. You can change the background media, for example, to be an image or to be a video. In this case, you might think that it doesn't make that much sense, but if we change the height to be a larger number and maybe move the position of the items to the bottom, then this might look a little bit better. We can increase the padding bottom here and add some padding to the left. And you can see that we are starting to build a layout that is somewhat familiar with some other things you might have seen around the web. And we have control of the corner radius as well, so we can round this a little. We can add a background overlay if we want, maybe then a gradient, and so on. You can keep playing with these options and create layouts that simply were not possible with Dawn out of the box. Now let's compare customizing this list over here, this product list over here, with what we have in Dawn for this feature collection section. Over here, we see that we have a few settings related to the product card. We can show the vendor and the product rating, and that's about it. However, in the case of Horizon, the product card is also a block. It is a repeater block, so if I modify something in this one, it will be modified across all of these different blocks. You can see over here that it is doing this by, in this product field, selecting the closest product. And then this product list over here is iterating across all of the different products in the selected collection, which in this case is the old collection. So let's do a few customizations here so you can see the flexibility that this has. Let's say that I wanted to move the product title to the top of the image and that I wanted to make it bold. Right now, this product title block doesn't support changing the text to bold. However, we can fix this by adding a text block. Then over here, we are going to remove all of this and we are going to reference a dynamic source. In this case, the closest product, and we are going to take the title. Now you can see that we have both the text block and the product title block, both having the exact same content. However, with the text block, I have the additional feature of being able to bold this because this field over here, this text field, is a rich text field. So I can select it all and I can press Command B, or I can just click on this button right away. Then I can drag this on top of the media of the product image, and I can remove the title from here because I don't need it anymore. And then I can click on the product card and I can change the color scheme to be like this, and now it all looks like part of the same product card. And now we can go to the page and we see that the intended effect is there, the product title is now bolded and at the top, but this looks a bit rough. We can fix this by maybe increasing the padding in all directions to be 12 pixels. So let's do that. And we can also increase the corner radius to something like 8 pixels. And let's also save that. And now, if I refresh this page over here, we can see that it looks much better. And if we go back to Dawn, doing something like what we just did is just not possible without needing to do code changes. You can see here that there is just no option to move the product title to the top, much less to be able to change its font weight or how it is displayed. And you can go here, click on Add Section, and keep browsing through the different sections that are available to see what you can do with them. Many of them are as customizable as the hero or product list we saw over here, but some don't have as many options. For instance, this product highlight section over here, even though you can see that it has a product media and then this side over here for the content, this side is very limited and all of the blocks are locked. So you cannot rearrange them, you cannot add new blocks over here, nor at the section level. And at most you can hide some, but you cannot really customize it that much. That is, of course, unless you do some code changes, at which point you will be able to do whatever you want with this theme, as with any other. And now, what happens with sections that you don't see here, but that are present in Dawn? For example, if we go to Dawn, there is this rich text section that you can see over here. That is not present in this theme. If I look for rich text, that doesn't show over here. That is because you can create this section yourself by using here a custom section. In a custom section, you can start dropping whatever blocks you want to get the layout you want. For example, let's try to replicate this. We have here a heading, a text, and a button. We can do this by wrapping this all in a group. Then in the group, we will add a text block. We will add another text block. and then we will add a button over here. For the text, let's copy exactly what we have over here. So we have talk about your brand. Let's copy it and paste it here, exactly like that. And then for the content here, let's copy this and let's paste it here. Now in the group, the first thing we want to do is center this. Next, we want to give in this section some vertical padding. So let's give it 20 and 20. Then we have to make this behave like a heading. So in presets, let's say that this is a heading 2. And then for this content over here, let's see how it looks like over here. It is a bit wider than what we have in this case. So we can click on this. And for the width, we can give it a max width of 9. And next we can take here another group. Take this group, move it here to the top, and put this text inside the group. And now we give this group a max width. So in width, let's give it a custom width of, let's say, 70%. And let's click aside. So this is saved, or maybe 6 to 5%, I think, will look more light than what we had a moment ago. And then to align the text, we actually have to change this to the fill and set this to center. And there we have it now. If I click on save and refresh this page over here, we can see that we have something somewhat similar to this rich text field over here. You can start tweaking it around to make it look exactly how you want, but the general idea of how you will accomplish something like that is what we just did here. And if you wonder why here I was able to align the text with this setting to center it, while here in the hero I was not, is because of the width setting over here. If I change this to be fill, then I have text alignment settings, so I can move this to the right, or center it, or move it to the left. However, you can see that it now impacts how this looks like. So the logo shrinks because this is filling all the available space. So to get the layout that I really want, I need to keep this in fit, but then I don't have the ability to align this text how I want. And finally, let's relate this to be its text. And you might think that these were a lot of steps to create a simple rich text section, and that's true, but you can solve for this by creating a preset for the custom section. So it starts with this layout right away, and you don't have to manually create these time after time. And that being said, with the latest improvements to the theme editor, once you create this layout once, you can right-click on it, copy, let's save this so it is lost, and you can go to any page you want. Let's go, for example, to the product page, and you can paste this section over here with all of the different blocks and settings that it had. So we can right-click on this and paste in between, and here we have this rich text section, which we copied from the homepage. And as we are in the product page, let us scroll to the top to see that the product information section is also being managed in a very flexible way, similar to what we have been seeing throughout this video. For example, you can see here that for all of these policies, there is not really a block that is a text with an icon. Instead, that is being created by having this group. This is a group that has been renamed with an icon and a text. And I know that this is a group because if I click on these three dots and I then click on edit code, you can see that the file that is being opened is group.liquid. So this is effectively just a group block that has been renamed and has these two other blocks as its children. And with this, we get a lot of flexibility. For example, if I wanted to have the text go first, then I can just rearrange this, and now for this line, I have the text going first. I can replicate this in the line below, or I can take a line and remove the icon if I want. and there you have that. Likewise, if you wanted to just change the icon, you can do so from here by selecting any icon from this list, for example, this one, and you get that icon over there. You can change its width if you want to make it larger. And if the icon you want is not in this list, you can get an image file for that icon and upload it to Shopify, and then select it from here. In this case, I will just select this image to use it as an example, but any PNG or JPEG file that you upload to Shopify should be able to be used as an icon from this block. And you can see my custom icon displaying over here. Now let's go out of the editor to focus on some of the interactive elements of the page, starting with the animations. So we have over here page transitions. And if I click on this item, you're going to see one in action. So you can see that the page doesn't go blank and then reloads over here. Instead, we got a subtle animation of expanding that product cart. Let's see that again. So if I click on this, you can see that it sort of expands and occupies this space that you see over here on the left side. Likewise, when adding items to the cart, we are going to see here that animation of the product image going directly into the cart. You could disable this and get the default behavior, by the way, from the theme settings, clicking on cart, and then you can select over here that you want the add to cart to auto open the drawer. If you then save that setting, we're going to get the behavior that you will get with other themes. So if I refresh this page now, I can add this to the cart, and I get the animation, but I also get the drawer being opened. Another interesting animation we get with this theme is in the collections page. Whenever this grid changes in any way, we're going to see an animation like this of the items moving around to their new position. If I sort this, I should also get the animation. And even if I filter it, for example, let's say that I want to filter it by out of stock, I only get a single item, and you saw how that moved from way to the bottom to here at the top. This is possible because in Horizon, Shopify has started to use the View Transitions API, which allows for this kind of animations without needing to reach for a library. Another thing that Horizon comes with out of the box, which Down doesn't, at least not in its latest version at the time of recording, which is 15.3, is discount codes in the cart. That is because this is a new feature that has just been added to Shopify, so unless there is a new Down update that adds support for this, it is not going to be included. If I expand this discount collapsible in my cart, you see that now I have this discount code field. For my store, I have created two discount codes. I have here discount 1, which applies a 10% off to the entire order, and then discount 2, which applies a 20% off to the entire order. Now, if I only have gift cards in my cart, I will not be able to apply these discount codes, and you can see that by over here, if I try to apply discount 1, I get an error. And there you can see how the error looks like, by the way. But then if I add this item to my cart, now you can see that Shopify automatically applies it because I had already tried to apply this. And if I apply now discount 2, you see that I get the remaining 20% off from the discounts that I have created. They stack, and I can remove them one by one if I want, like this, and the total updates automatically. To be able to do this, you just need to install an app, and finally, that's no longer the case. Another important change in the Horizon themes is that they don't support legacy customer accounts. So here, if I click on Sign In, I am redirected to the sign-in page for the new customer accounts. Now, if I go to my store settings and look for customer accounts over here, you can see that new customer accounts are enabled by default. I can move these to legacy customer accounts, but even then, if I refresh this page, you're going to see that when I click Sign In, I am still redirected to the sign-in page for the new customer accounts. Now, if I try doing the same with Done, so let's click here on Preview. If I click here, you can see that I am in the login page for the legacy customer accounts. And we can recognize this page because it is embedded into the theme. You can see that I see here my navbar and my footer. Meanwhile, here in Done, in Horizon, if I click on Sign In, I don't see any of that, and the domain for the sign in is in shopify.com. here it is still in my stores page. And from the themes homepage over here, you can see that there is a warning for Horizon, and it is that this theme doesn't support legacy customer accounts. And it says update customer accounts, and this link probably takes you over here to change to new customer accounts if you are comfortable with that. You could still manually add support for legacy customer accounts to this theme, because what the support for these legacy customer accounts look like is if you click on edit code for down and you look for customer, you can see that there are a bunch of templates for customer accounts. Those are not present in Horizon. So if I click here on edit code and look for customer, you can see that there are no customer templates. If those templates were added to Horizon, then legacy customer accounts will be supported. However, as legacy customer accounts are on their way of being deprecated, it is recommended that you upgrade to the new system sooner than later. If you want to see the differences between legacy customer accounts and new customer accounts, there is a video in the channel where I cover that. I will leave that in the video description. And finally, let's check the statement that I made earlier in the video, saying that all of the themes we see here are pretty much the same theme, only changing the initial content we have in them. For that, I went over here and added Savor, Basil, Atelier, and Heritage. All of these themes are over here, and if we click on Customize for any of them, such as this one over here, we are going to see that even though the starting point is different, the font, the colors are different. If we add a new section, we're going to see that the sections we have available are all the same sections we saw a moment ago with Horizon. And if I go into the blogs for any of these sections, for example, here, you can see that the blogs I have available are also the same blogs we have available with Horizon, but they look a bit different based on this theme. For example, if we look in the bottom you can see that the color, the background color is this beige over here, and the text is black. But in Horizon, the background color was black and the text was white. But that is by default. You can change all of those settings from the global settings by changing color schemes and such. But to confirm this, here I have cloned the Horizon theme, and now I will do Shopify theme pool. And from this list, let's first bring here the Heritage theme. And after we finish pulling all of these files, let's see what changed. So you can see that the only difference, the only files that have been modified are all of these JSON files. For example, if I go to car.json, we can see that these settings have changed between these two themes, but none of the liquid files, nor the JavaScript files, nor the CSS files have changed after I made this pull. But let's try with another one. So I'll do git reset, head hard to go back to what I had in Horizon. And now let's do, once again, Shopify theme pool. And from this list now, let's pick Atelier. And after this finishes pulling, once again, let's see the difference. And we see once again, 17 files have changed, all of which are JSON files. And you can see here what has changed this time around. And the same will apply for the rest of the themes in this collection. So there isn't a theme here that is better than the others. They are just differing starting points for the same codebase. Now, a question you might see around after the launch of Horizon is whether Dawn is deprecated or not. At the time I am recording this video, I have not seen an official communication saying it is, but as the theme source is available, you can see that the last release was in late February of 2025, almost 3 months ago. And that the recent commits are just, as you can see over here, just translations by this bot. And overall, the activity for the repository has slowed down significantly from what it was before. Based on that, you can draw your own conclusions, but regardless of whether Shopify stops adding new features to Dawn or not, I don't expect this theme to stop working anytime soon. And a precedent for that is David, Shopify's go-to free theme before Dawn was released. Even though this theme hasn't been updated in years, if I click on preview over here, you're going to see that I am still able to see my products. I can go to a product page, add a product to the cart, and from the cart, I can view the cart and go to checkout and complete my purchase. The theme might not support the latest feature Shopify has added by default, but it is still functional, and with custom coding, you or your development team can patch it to support anything new you want. That being said, if I was starting a store today, I would pick Horizon over Dawn in most situations. And with that, this has been an overview of Horizon. If you have questions, let me know down in the comments, and if you need support modifying this theme or migrating to it, you can reach out and we can figure something out. So if you found this video helpful, remember to like and subscribe for more Shopify related content, and I will see you all in the next one.